The Cessna 172 Skyhawk is one of the most simple and popular planes of all time. At over 44,000 units produced, the Cessna 172 is the single most produced aircraft ever and is often used for aviation training. It's relatively simple to fly and reliable enough to survive student pilots smacking it off the runway. This plane is the bread and butter of aviation. It's all reliable. It's the first step of many pilots. But this plane holds an unimaginable record. Since the Cessna Skyhawk was introduced in 1956, many more technologically advanced planes have been made. The X-15 reached Mach 6.7. The Concorde could carry passengers from New York to London in under 3 hours. We have planes that can take off vertically. We have airliners with a range of almost 10,000 miles. We got rid of Katy Perry for about 10 minutes. We have planes without pilots. We have pilots without planes. Nathan Fielder flew a 737.
So you're concerned about airline safety?
Well, I don't want to die.
We have air-to-air refueling. We have planes that don't even look like planes. But somehow, since 1958, no one has ever beaten the flight endurance record set by a Cessna 172 Skyhawk. And there is a very good reason why. In 1956, the Hacienda Hotel opened in Las Vegas and wanted a way to gain publicity. The solution was obviously to break the flight endurance record of 46 days and 20 hours. Robert Tim, a slot machine repairman at the hotel, convinced the owner to fund this stunt. He was a former World War II fighter pilot, and he selected Irv Quincy as his co-pilot, who had experience as an aircraft mechanic and a pilot. The hotel promised them $1,000 per day in flight and $10,000 extra if they broke the record. They then started towards their goal, spending a year modifying a Cessna 172 to break this endurance record. They decided they needed a special engine, so they went to Continental Motors and got a brand new one. First, they gutted the plane to save weight, and then they added a 95-gallon fuel tank and a pump into the fuselage, and then modified the engine so that they could change the oil and filters without turning off the engine. They also modified the engine to inject alcohol into the combustion chambers to prevent carbon buildup. As for personal comforts, they had a mattress, a small sink, and a portable camp toilet. They also carried tools and extra spark plugs. They also planned to rendezvous with a truck during flight to receive supplies by lowering a bucket and would bring up fuel through a hose brought up into the plane. Their first 3 attempts all failed due to mechanical issues. Something worth noting at this point is this quote from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. A note written in Tim's diary of those early flights illustrates the innocence of the 1950s when he wrote that the entire sky lit up one morning at 4 a.m. He later found out that he had witnessed one of the 57 above-ground atomic bomb blasts set off that year in a testing area located 65 miles northwest of Las Vegas. What? If this is true, AOPA is the only source I read that mentioned it. All of the other sources had just about the same stories, but AOPA included some parts that are just very interesting. And these parts are interesting enough that I'll include them here, but I'll be sure to mention which parts are AOPA additions that I just can't find anywhere else. Okay, at this point, after 3 failed attempts, the record was already broken by Jim Heth and Bill Burkhart, and the new record to beat was 50 days. After the 3 failures, the longest of which was just 17 days, Tim decided to find a new co-pilot. He went with John Cook, another aircraft mechanic and pilot. But here's where AOPA adds a bit to the story. According to them, just prior to being replaced, Quincy removed the special engine and replaced it with the old one, and also disconnected the anti-carbon buildup alcohol system. And this was not an act of sabotage, as this was the plane that successfully broke the record. Tim and Cook took off on December 4th, 1958. Their first order of business was to perform a low pass so that a chase car could paint a white stripe on the wheel. This stripe would be examined before landing, and if it was gone or severely scuffed, it would indicate that the plane secretly landed. After this, they spent most of their time flying over the desert, but sometimes would go to cities, including LA, for publicity. When it came time to refuel the plane, they would rendezvous with a supply truck, fly 20 feet off the ground, lower down a winch to the truck, which would then attach a fuel hose that could be hauled back up. This refueling took about 3 minutes, and they would complete it 128 times total, around twice per day. As for food, this was provided by the Hacienda Hotel, as well as a quart of water for bathing every other day. The food was chopped up and crammed into a thermos for transport to the plane, so it wasn't the greatest quality food. Apparently, they also had a platform on the plane that could be deployed to make this rendezvous easier, but I just can't see it in any of these pictures. Occasionally, Cook would show off by standing on this platform and reach across to wipe the windshield. And according to AOPA, on January 12, 1959, which I don't know why they have the exact date for this incident, but Tim went out onto the platform to bathe and brush his teeth. But just then, Cook realized that they weren't going to make it over an upcoming ridge if the platform was out. And so this caused Tim to have to jump back in the plane naked and with a toothbrush in his mouth and wrangle the platform back up. And there were a couple of more interesting occurrences on this flight. According to AOPA, near Christmas, they dropped down candy canes on parachutes to their kids. And there was also an incident where, on day 36, Tim fell asleep at the controls for an hour and was saved by the plane's autopilot system, which then broke just days later. 39 days in, the generator broke, which meant no lights, no heat, and no fuel pump. So fuel now had to be pumped in with a manual pump. AOPA says, quote, "The entries in Cook's journal begin to reflect the effects that loss of sleep, the lack of physical activity, the constant engine noise, and daily chores were having on both of the crew." They finally broke the record on January 23rd, but they decided to continue for as long as possible. By February, the spark plugs had fouled, and the plane could barely climb after refueling. By that point, though, they had completed their goal. Aviation historian Janet Bednarek said, "They had determined that they had passed the point where nobody else was going to try this, and nobody has." On February 7th, 1959, the white stripe of paint on their wheels was confirmed to still be there, and the Cessna 172 finally landed after 64 days, 22 hours, 19 minutes, and 150,000 miles of non-stop flying. Tim and Cook were essentially immobile for 2 months straight and had to be physically carried from the plane. After recovering from this flight, Tim returned to his job at the Hacienda Hotel, and Cook resumed his work as a pilot. The Hacienda Hotel closed and was demolished in 1996, and what's there now is the Mandalay Bay Hotel. As for the plane, it now hangs in the Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas. So this record was set using the most common airplane ever. So why has it never been broken? Well, the reason is, why would you want to? Over 2 months in a box, eating chopped and smashed food and bathing with half a quart of water on the outside of a plane, hearing nothing but engine noise, constantly trying to entertain yourself or not crash into something. No, thank you. John Cook, after the flight, said, "Next time I feel in the mood to fly endurance, I'm going to lock myself in a garbage can with the vacuum cleaner running and have Bob serve me T-bone steaks chopped up in a thermos bottle. That is, until my psychiatrist opens for business in the morning." If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I'll have more videos coming soon.